Radio Free Go-Go.
See, the leaves are falling down, but it's time for you to get up, rub the crust from your eyes, and jam out with the Capitol Hoop Caucus. I'm Wardell McCabe, and I'm joined as always by my two co-hosts. First is a man whose favorite dried fruit is the apricot. It's Isaac Harris, and the man on his left is wondering why in the world we're resorting to eating dried fruit. It's Troy Halliburton. Gentlemen, did I represent your stance on dried fruit correctly?
No?
Hey, man, I love a little raisin, man. Come on.
A little
raisin in the sun.
Golden raisin, or what kind of raisin?
Golden raisin. Let's roll with that.
Golden raisin.
Throw sprinkle in a little oatmeal. Come on.
Okay,
It's definitely that season right now. You know, a little cinnamon. I'm getting hungry right now.
See now, man. Look. Now I'm wishing I had a bowl of oatmeal in front of me. Isaac, what's your favorite dried fruit?
Is pomegranate considered a dry fruit still? No.
Pomegranate. What is
Pomegranate? I want to say.
How is a pomegranate dry?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but that is my favorite fruit. Period.
Oh well, favorite fruit is one conversation, but a dried fruit. You know what? Never mind. Doesn't
I'm
matter.
Not a dry fruit guy.
Let's not dive into the dry fruit debate because that's not the purpose of the Capitol Hoop Caucus. Troy, what is the point of this show?
Oh, the purpose of this show is to be the most successful and preeminent basketball show in the DMV area, covering hoops from pro to prep, men's and women's. If they're throwing up that round ball, we're talking about it.
You are absolutely right. And we're talking about it every Saturday morning on ESPN 630 and the ESPN 630 app. But if you can't catch us live on the radio airways, then do not worry, do not fuss, because you can always catch us on the podcast feed wherever it is that you get your podcast. And even now, you can catch us on YouTube. So if you want to go check out our smiling faces, just go on and head over to YouTube right now to do so. But let's get on to today's show because the Wizards preseason has actually just come to an end. So we're going to be reviewing how they fared while also doing one final preview on the leaps we anticipate this young roster making in the upcoming season. And then we'll address some potential trade candidates on the roster. Then after that, we'll have a very special conversation with this week's special guest. More on him in a few moments to discuss the changing landscape of the NBA media. And then from there, we'll reopen the scouting report to assess how some of the Wizards offseason additions performed in the preseason. And then we'll close out the show with trivia time from the line. But first, as always, we have to get on to the Beltway Beat. As I said, we're going to be starting off the show by recapping the Wizards' last week of preseason action. And to do so, we'll be joined by a special guest. He's an editor at The Athletic and the author of Spaced Out, How the NBA's Three-Point Revolution Changed Everything You Thought You Knew About Basketball. It's Mike Prada. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Do I count as a dried fruit in this industry?
Jeez. Yeah. That's like, your fingers are pruned at this point.
I don't know.
Oh, my goodness.
We can say age. We can say wine.
Yeah, just like
very nice.
There
Wow,
you go.
well
I like it.
done.
I like
Yeah.
it. Nice mouth.
Gotta say, it's the first podcast that's been on that has been introduced by trying to rank dry fruits. I can't say my ranking list goes much deeper than like 2 fruits.
There's no one
So
doing it
very
just like
impressive.
us.
Yeah, I mean, once I dropped the raisin thing, it was like, all downhill from there.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
It's like the Raisins are the Oklahoma City Thunder, and everybody else is everybody else in the West.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I like
all the
that.
other
I like
random
that.
dried assortments of fruits. But let's hope that something that's aging like a wine will also be the Wizards preseason. And let's go through some of the games that they had. First, they had a 112-113 loss to Toronto on Sunday, October 12th, which they followed up with a 103-120 win over New York on Monday. Quick note there, I watched on MSG Network stream because, Monumental's going through their whole thing. And they cut to Bub Carrington early in the game, and they put Trey Johnson's name there. So we're ironing out some kinks in the preseason right now. No shots at the MSG Network, but something they got to work on. And then they closed out the preseason, the Wizards did, with a 98-119 loss to Detroit on Thursday. It should be noted first, though, before we review any of these games, that there was a pretty key takeaway with Bub in that final preseason game. He exited the first quarter after his knee buckled on an awkward landing when he was trying to contest a pass to Asar Thompson in transition. He was then ruled out for the remainder of the game with knee soreness. Troy, I'll ask you first. What are you thinking about the Wizards preseason, and what is the potential loss of Bub mean to this team?
Yeah, well, the first about the Wizards preseason, I feel like it's like a grand opening, grand closing. Like they were the only team in the NBA to have only 3 preseason games. Their preseason slates began very late, so their first preseason game was last Sunday. So they only played 3 preseason games, and they had what I thought was an elongated training camp process. And so, I think that they really, got in a lot of work with their scrimmaging against each other. And, I think that when they got out there and played against another opponent, I had some concerns and questions about, what they looked like from an offensive standpoint. I think that there's going to be some struggles like scoring the basketball for this team. And then with the Bub Carrington injury, like, to me, the biggest thing is the fact that now who's going to play point guard for this team? Like, I really started looking at the depth chart, and I'm like, okay, if Bub's going to be out for like, a week or two, or, that's being, optimistic, who's going to come out there and be the lead ball handler for this team? And so, that kind of really presents some roster quirks, and, I think that it's going to be something of note for the Wizards to start this season.
Yeah, it absolutely will be. Now, Mike, I'll lead that into a question to you. Who do you think on this roster has the capabilities of stepping up as a point guard should Bub be out for an extended period of time?
No, I don't think there really is one. I think it'll be CJ McCollum. I mean, I don't think they're going to go with the traditional point guard. I mean, look at the construction of this roster. They've got no ones, no fives. It's entirely 2s, 3s, and 4s. So I suspect that more of the playmaking, Middleton will do more of the playmaking. McCollum will bring the ball up a little bit more. In some ways, it might be a little liberating for some of the other players. I think, we saw a lot of Keyshawn George get put the ball in his hands. I think they're going to experiment with that a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think if this team was built to win, this would be a huge problem. Of course, it is not really built to win. So, it's just going to make a bad team worse in the short term. But that's where I think it's sort of by design that they don't really have other options.
Yeah, it definitely is. And as you're saying, this team not designed to win. That's not really the goal of the season. It's really more so development. So, Isaac, I'll ask you this. Obviously, in terms of wins, the Wizards would be at a disadvantage here, losing a point guard. How could they try to use this to their advantage to develop some of those 2s, 3s, and 4s that they have a bevy of on this roster in Bub's absence?
Well, you got to see what you got. The only way is you got to play a lot of different combinations with those guards and see which lineups they fit comfortable with. See if it makes sense to have CJ with Keyshawn, or have Keyshawn bring up the ball. So when you play a little, games like this and try to mix and match the combinations in practice, just see which lineups work. So it seems like the Wizards are going to go for that positionless basketball lineup. I don't know if it's going to work with some of the guys they have because due to the lack of experience, but it's an experiment that they have to go through, and it's just trying to figure out which lineups make sense.
Yeah, I really think that this really could be, some kind of like genius plan from the front office of, putting the young players in a position where they have to develop, certain skills a lot faster than what they would have on a normal NBA roster constructed or roster construction. So for example, it's like a guy like a Will Riley. Maybe when they drafted him, they always envisioned him, kind of becoming more of a ball handler, and hopefully, like, maybe he might be a future point guard. So he'll have opportunities to come out there and be able to play make and kind of work through his mistakes. But Mike, I very much agree with what you said with the way the roster was constructed. That it's all 2s and 2s through 4s. Because, there isn't really a true center on the roster, and there really isn't a true point guard on the roster.
No, it's by design. I mean, it is actually kind of comical how little front court depth the team has. That brings me to something that I constantly think about with this team is this good for Alex Sarr? But that's a whole separate topic. I mean, on the wing and guard front, to me, this probably is good for players like Trey Johnson and Cam Whitmore, and I think especially the latter, where when the season started in the preseason, I looked at sort of all the guys that they had, and I was thinking, okay, somebody is not going to get minutes, even with Koulibaly injured. You look at just sort of who needs minutes at the 2, 3, and 4 positions. You've got Trey Johnson. Middleton's going to play when Middleton's healthy, and Middleton should play because he's kind of the best pick and roll player on the team. Koulibaly, George, Corey Kispert's going to get his 25 minutes. Justin Champagny should play a bit because he's not so bad. I just kept thinking to myself, the Wizards need scoring. Where's Cam Whitmore going to play? Now that if Carrington's out for an extended period of time, which I don't know, it's possible he's not. I don't know. I got the sense that the injury wasn't that serious, but maybe I have bad info there. Then I think that clears a spot. Either you put Trey Johnson in the starting lineup or you put Whitmore in the starting lineup. And those are two. I mean, Whitmore in particular is someone that, the Wizards traded for knowing that he didn't get chances in Houston. And if he wants to have chances to do what, to fix his weaknesses and to show what he needs, the Wizards need somebody who can put the ball in the hoop. So I think it's a real opportunity for Cam Whitmore to expand his game if he's able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and let's use this as a time to just assess some of the young players on this squad and how they performed in the preseason. Troy, was there anyone that you felt really stood out to you that took a leap forward in the preseason that you thought, like, man, the development is really coming along?
Man, I'm on the Keyshawn George train here. I believe
Yep.
that, this is a guy who, when you talk about today's landscape of the NBA and the most important position being that, that quintessential 3-and-D wing, like, I feel like he has all of the tools to be a guy who can be a rotational player on a playoff team. And for me, like, the thing that I was so impressed with, especially in last night's game where he had 20 points, is that the fact that Keyshawn George is aggressive with the ball. He's very decisive with what he wants to do on the court. And, I think that he's developing the confidence that is allowing him to go out there and try different things. And once he starts to realize that, okay, that worked, like, he can now, really, kind of string together a real offensive packet that I think will help him and not only the team, but I'm really most impressed with him on the defensive end. Like, he's going to be a stock machine, getting steals and blocks throughout the season. Like, he just has this real uncanny knack of knowing where the ball is, knowing when a player is going to shoot, when they're going to put the ball on the ground. Like, you cannot put the ball on the ground around him because he's just so relentless when it comes to pursuing the basketball.
Now, Mike,
he's got some sauce to him. You see how he was going at Kate Cunningham the other night?
Yep.
He's got a little bit of sauce. That's the part I like the most because he is going to fail a lot. I mean, they all are, but he is especially now. I mean, Kate got him a bunch of times. He's still skinny, but to me, what that shows is he's just going to keep going, and he's not going to be affected by what's going on around the court. So, and he definitely, the profile is really interesting, and it does feel like he leveled up with his ball handling too. I felt like for all the cool things he showed last year, I felt like he was turning the ball over way too much. I feel like I saw less of that in the preseason.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, he definitely has a lot of sauce. One of the things that I remember from last season was when they played the Golden State Warriors, and then after the game, Draymond Green commented that he's like, yo, these guys out there bullying me, like, a little bit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that they were in his face, and they were, they were asserting themselves, even though that they were rookies in the NBA. And, Mike, I agree, like, wholeheartedly. His ball handling has improved dramatically from last year. I think that his handle is a lot tighter than it was last season. Like it's like he's able to control it and keep it in the space. And I think he's also doing more with less. So, and I feel like last year he might have been doing a lot of over dribbling, where this year, like, his dribble is really tight and he's just kind of just getting to his spot and either raising up or getting off of the ball.
The best way, sorry to cut in here, the best way that I can describe what you're saying is the game's finally starting to slow down for him. Like, he's making more efficient plays rather than just, like, trying to take plays. That's just I have to say that one thing. I feel like that's the simple oversimplification of it.
What are the chances that he's the best player from that draft class?
100%. High.
I think it's very high, especially because of the fact of the positional value. So, like, I think that because, like, even if Bub or Sar were to be the best version of themselves, I think that just because he plays the position he plays, like if he becomes the best version of himself, like that will provide tremendous value for this franchise and what they're trying to go through with the rebuild.
Yeah, I think it's something for them that, Troy, you talked about earlier in this offseason that what the Wizards have been trying to do is get as many bites of the apple as they possibly can, right? As many diamonds as possible. And it seems like they've really hit on one. What's interesting here with George is that seems to be the consensus view around the league, is people are really high on him for everyone, and that's, I think, a pretty nice point, because there was a report earlier this week about Alex Sarr where that's not the consensus about him around the league, that other people in the league aren't really viewing his ceiling as particularly high. So the fact that the Wizards have someone that everyone views as could be a guy for their future is very much so rewarding to see that the efforts are actually coming to fruition for this front office. But Isaac, to build off of that, were there any other players that you saw having standout performances in the preseason?
I will say this, because outside of Keyshawn George, I'm going to shine a light to a vet here. Corey Kispert is trying to show that his trade value is going up a little bit. I will give that a little bit. I have to throw a little light on him. He's finally starting to shoot a little more, which I think, and have a little more confidence in that. And obviously, we know where the situation is with all the young guys, but I think for him being the longest tenured Wizard, seeing some signs of that, I think is positive for us, because we can get something back in the trade deadline back for him if this playing how Corey's playing right now kind of holds up. So I have to throw that shout out there. Sorry, it seems a little off, but it's my out there as a basketball player. I'm all right. I see some trade value.
No, I mean, he's certainly a player that other teams are going to be trying to circle around for, see his progression this year, see if he is worth taking a swing on. Troy, I'll ask you the same thing, though. Who would you say is the most likely trade candidate on the roster, and what do you think they're going to have to do for the Wizards to get real value in return for them?
Well, the most likely trade candidate I probably would say is Chris Middleton. Just because he's a guy who actually already has NBA championship level experience. Like, if you're a team and you're trading for Chris Middleton, that this is a guy who can come into your locker room and play championship level basketball. And especially he might not be the same guy that he was when the Bucks won the championship in 2021. But he could definitely be a 7th, 8th man in a playoff rotation. He has an expiring contract. He can play make. He can shoot. He's an adequate defender. I think the biggest question for him will be whether he gets moved or not is, how do his ankles hold up? Like, the health, to me, is the biggest aspect of, where his value stands coming into this season.
Right. And Mike?
The problem with both of the veterans is that their salary numbers are really high. And around the league, a lot of teams are apron restricted in some way so that they can't take more back than they give up. So that might limit their markets. I mean, I think the best chance the Wizards have to trade either of those guys, because, I mean, we talk about showcasing, like, everybody knows what Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum are, doesn't really change so much for them to be like playing a zillion minutes and say, oh, wait, oh, wow, CJ McCollum, he could do that? I had no idea. No, everybody knows what you're do. But, the aprons make it really hard. I think the best chance will be, and this is going to be an interesting sort of strategic pivot for the front office, is your best chance is probably take back bad money that goes beyond this year, essentially do a reverse Jordan Poole trade, move them, get an asset for that, and cut into that oodles of cap space that you're counting on this summer. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see what the Wizards value more. Do they want to maintain that, or are they playing the longer game, and how much patience they have for that? That will be the real gauge of the trade values of the vets. And it's not really how they play or what they do. I just think they make so much money even on expiring contracts that, if you're a contender, are you going to trade for CJ McCollum at his number? Or are you going to trade for, I don't know, Malik Monk at his number, or someone who makes less money than Malik Monk? They're all very similar players. It's just easier to complete trades with lower salary numbers in this apron era. So, we'll just have to see how bad the money the Wizards will be willing to take back for those guys.
Yeah, now how bad the money and what the draft compensation would be to do that. I think the biggest thing for the Wizards is the fact that they have optionality, and I think that's the most important thing is that they could go in pretty much any direction that they want to, and I think that a lot of it is going to be based off of how the young players develop. And so, if the young players are developing at a rate where you think that they might be able to be, playoff contenders in 2 or 3 years. Maybe maybe you just let, CJ and Chris Middleton walk at the end of the summer and use that cap space to, kind of develop around those guys. But if you are, at the trade deadline and you're thinking that, man, maybe we don't know what we have, then you might be able to, kind of use the Middleton and CJ's salaries to kind of go out there and use it as a mechanism to, like you said, Mike, to get take on a future salary where they can come in and, take more bites at the apple. So, like I say, I think it just depends on how the young players develop and which direction they go. And, I'm really curious to see what the Wizards front office kind of values as, do they want the cap space or do they want the optionality of being able to, use different mechanisms?
I mean, the largest question is, will they have a choice, or have they just been losing for too long that this has got to turn around? I mean, this is the last year that they owe their pick obligation out, so this is the last year they have to be bad. We talk about patience all the time. I mean, it's been a long. How much patience is ownership and even the front office going to have? If you get to the end of this process and you've got all these young players who 25% of the time look really good, but there's sort of it's all different 25% patches. What do you do? That's a big question. I mean, to me, that's more instructive of what the trade value of these veterans is than anything that the veterans do themselves.
Yeah, and I think we have to be realistic on the landscape of things, right? How many teams around the league even have a bad contract and decent enough assets to be willing to bring on someone like Chris Middleton, right? It's the list of teams are pretty small. and Mike, as he said, it's like, what is Middleton going to show out there that we haven't already seen? Is he going to magically regenerate those knees? I don't know. And so, I don't want to be crass here, but he just doesn't seem as likely to be moved. And that's where, Isaac, I'll give you that credit there, is it does feel like someone like Kispert is more likely to be moved because that contract is on a much lower scale, and he's a fairly decent player who the majority of his skill is an asset that these teams kind of covet. And so I think he could be a player that could be moved come trade deadline time. But the other ones, it's going to be a little bit tougher. I think if I had to rank them, it'd be Kispert, CJ, and then Middleton at the bottom. But that's just the size of those contracts. But anyways, let's move on from that conversation. Let's get some quick notes here. And that's that Malcolm Brogdon, who last suited up in the NBA regular season with the Washington Wizards, is actually retired. So let me just ask this to Troy. I saw that you had a post on X. What are you thinking of Brogdon's future here?
Man, I think it's very interesting that Brogdon, kind of went through the whole offseason, trying to get his body back together, and then just decided like a week before the season that, maybe this isn't for me anymore. And so, one of the things that I found out from, covering the team from the last season was that Malcolm really enjoyed his time in D.C. I know that, his wife's family is from the DMV area, and so I would not be surprised if, he ended up eventually settling in this area to, live post-career. And so, one of the things that I also learned was that Malcolm Brogdon, he trained at the Wizards practice facility up until July 1st, the day that free agency started, because he was technically still a Wizard. And so that when he left the building, though, like that, he was very appreciative of everyone there. He personally went around and thanked every single person in the building, for just the amount of work and help that they gave to him over his one season here. And so, if he wants to get into coaching, I think that the Wizards would be lucky to have him being a part. Maybe he wants to scout. Maybe he wants to do something. But, if he wants to, work in basketball as a post-career, they call this guy the president. I think he could be anything he wants to be. He could be a GM of a team. He could be, a scout. He could be a coach. Like, if he wants to, get into basketball, I think it would behoove the Wizards to, try to see if they can get him on our team.
Yeah, no, shout out to Malcolm Brogdon, possibly one of the best modern UVA grads that came out there. He is, I have to put that out there, and because our station is a UVA guy. But I will say this for Malcolm, he is comfortable in DC. You could tell that he had a little tighter connection being DC, despite all the spots he's been. And I definitely see him making DC his home, especially with his in-laws being from here, being from the DMV, and he's actually felt very comfortable being here. Yeah, without a doubt, I think he's going to be something within the Wizards organization in the near future.
Yeah, fun note on him, too. He retired without ever having been assessed a technical foul in over 13,000 minutes of NBA basketball.
That's a genuinely great
wild
guy. That's a nice guy right
For
there.
real.
Stand up, fella. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We continue this conversation on the other side. This is the Capital Hoop Caucus on ESPN 630 and the ESPN 630 app. Welcome back into the Capital Hoop Caucus on ESPN 630. Alongside Troy Halliburton and Isaac Harris, I'm Wardell McCabe, and we are still joined by our very special guest, Mike Prada of The Athletic. We're going to have a segment here of a very different variety. Our guest, Mike Prada, is a name that many listening will likely know as someone who's contributed much to the Wizards blogosphere with Bullets Forever, very much like our own Troy Halliburton. And so, similar to what we did a few weeks ago with Kyle Weedeye, we wanted to give Troy and Mike the floor to discuss how the media landscape has changed over the past few years. So, Troy, with that in mind, I'll just go ahead and give the mic over to you.
Yeah, I think that there's a very interesting conversation to be had about, how basketball journalism has changed over, the last decade or two. And so, I wanted to first, take this opportunity to, give Mike his flowers, because I grew up reading Bullets Forever and, Truth About It. And so, the being able to, look and see the things that Kyle Weedeye and Mike were doing, in the blogging game. Shout out to Dave McMenamin, who was ghostwriting for Gilbert Arenas' blog. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the Wizards media space were really kind of pioneers in the whole blogging space. And so when you talk about premier basketball blogs from back then, the Wizards were really doing it big. And so, Mike, I just wanted to, really get you to talk about, what do you remember about those days from, the bloggers row, and, how do you see, as somebody who's an editor right now at The Athletic, how the media landscape has changed from the blogging to the, the podcasting, the pivot to video shift, and then now everybody has a Substack newsletter.
Yeah. I remember that I had no idea what I was doing, and it was really cool to be able to fail and figure it out. It's a luxury that I don't think a lot of people get right now. So that's the part I'm really most thankful for, is the ability to try stuff out. It's funny, Dan Steinberg just joined The Athletic, and we were talking a little bit about the DC the DC pipeline to media and how robust it is from back in those days recently. But yeah, it was a funny thing. At the time, Ted Leonsis was kind of in this space, new as a Capitals owner. His, I think, Q rating was pretty high, and he was very big on this idea of let's have an open tent. He saw that the technology was changing, that media was changing, and that fans were trying to connect to the teams in different ways than through a traditional newspaper. And I would say probably between 2005 and 6 and 2012 was just a massive disruption in just the delivery system. And then again, you probably were attracted to our sites because it felt like you were there with other fans. That was probably the thing that most appealed, and you didn't get that from your paper. You got, which is again no slight on the paper or any of the traditional outlets, but that was a very different thing, and that was a very empowering feeling. I always like to think that I was, nobody else could write for the readers that we had, and as a reader that we had, and that was just a new perspective. And sort of Leonsis and I think the Wizards and Monumentals, thought at the time was these are the types of people we want to embrace. And so yes, they were. I don't know if they were the first in the entire NBA to let us into the locker room. I know it was sort of provisional. It was very had to be just us two. Eventually that list expanded. There were a ton of growing pains because we didn't have the journalism background. We had to learn a lot about the politics of the beat, and the it's awkward for the players to talk to people who are kind of fans of theirs, and there's a lot of that, and there are a lot of people there that I appreciate that sort of helped show the way. A lot of the traditional media folks, the Michael Lees, the Ivan Carters, were just so, considering we were kind of coming for them, they were really nice. um David Aldridge back in the day, who I now work with, was just terrific. I mean, I think you go from those days, and now it's like there are so many entry points into fandom and the sport as a whole, that like Adam Silver can say we're a highlights league, and we can maybe get mad at him, but he's not wrong. And
No.
so that really, the delivery system of information is just so different now. And I think back when we were starting to blog, there was none of that, and now I think you sort of have almost an overabundance of that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an overabundance. I feel like the market is kind of oversaturated, and to me the quality of words has gone down. So like everybody's blogging, but sometimes you read a post and it's like a salacious headline, and then it's like 200 words of empty calories. Like where they're not storytelling. It's just really like kind of clickbait stuff. But
That's
Mike,
what they would say about us, though.
yeah, well, yeah, like, but you guys were actually doing journalism, like, so I like the stuff that you and Kyle would write, like that was like to me, true like journalism of just storytelling, and given that behind the curtain scene of aspects of things that were going on within the franchise. But Mike, one of the things that you just brought up and I really want to touch on was the fact that you talked about building of community. And so when you talk about like if you were just a reader of the Washington Post, you don't really have a understanding of what the conversation is among other Wizards fans unless you're like just talking with your friends or talking with your coworkers or people who you know as basketball fans. But like the internet, like really, kind of brought everybody together, like being on, Bullets Forever message boards, and where you had this kind of sense of community, and you could have, pretty much a Greek chorus of, groaning complaints and just I don't know, just like the building of community and just having all these different conversations surrounding the team, where it didn't really feel like an echo chamber back then. And so, I just really wanted to talk to you about what was it like with the Wizards, Twitter community, from the early stages, and do you think that some of the fandom of now different teams and the pockets of their Twitter, do you think that some of that stuff has become toxic now?
Yeah, I mean, for right now, like I don't even know what. I mean, it's not called Twitter. There's like 700 different platforms. I don't really even know like where you would identify the community. I mean, I think when we started, I mean, Bullshit was part of the SB Nation network for those who didn't know, and the whole premise of SB Nation was the name was Red Sox Nation, but sports blogs. We said there is a hole in the marketplace where fans cannot connect at the time. I mean, this was like pre-Reddit. This was pre-Twitter. And there was a desire to have these sort of micro communities around key topics, and sports is like the perfect place for that. And it was a way for you to be connected to the team if you weren't in the same market. Like I went to school in Boston, and so for college, and so for me that was kind of the connecting spirit. And then I came back, and now I'm not in DC anymore, and it's still what kind of roots me a little bit to my hometown. But there wasn't any of that. That was sort of our differentiating factor. And for that to work, the people who were actually running those sites, folks like, some of the guys that are now in traditional media, like a Ben Golliver who was doing our Blazers site, and a Tom Ziller who's got his Substack, and a Tim Cato who's now at the All City site, and later Adam Mares. I don't know. There's countless names. You took. So like almost like a couple lead voices of the community. The connection, the authenticity was the whole thing. That was, what I think SB Nation was really smart to identify, and I think eventually a lot of social media networks have kind of figured out. And now we're at the point where we have these micro communities around. How many different Reddit subreddits are there at this point? was that sports was kind of one of those first places where people kind of wanted to talk to each other about a shared interest that like kind of if you talked about it in the mainstream, you're kind of like, where are you finding like this diehard Wizards fan who wants to talk about, you know, Randy Foy's shot selection? I don't know. I'm just trying to think about like kind of who they had. I remember there was like a whole cycle about I was like Dominic McGuire was like this guy I was so excited about, and could he be like this diamond in the rough? You know, these sorts of things now exist in television and so many different avenues. At the time it wasn't so accessible, and sports was such a natural fit for it, and that was something that you can't provide if you're not a fan of the team yourself. And so for us, at least, that was always the number one thing. And I found that it helped. I have a little bit more of a journalism background. I know Kyle, I think, has a creative writing background. Different people had different sort of ways into this field, but like to me, it was helpful because I really knew what fans wanted to know, and I knew that what the discussions were that fans were talking about, and I had a really direct line. And to me, I almost sort of thought of it as like, I'm not going to get the inside story. I don't know the players the same way, but like if you're curious about like why this thing is happening, like I'll just be your rep in the room. I felt like I was representing fans directly, and you know that was something that I think now in a lot of ways it's baked into entire media setups. Like there are teams and teams of people that are built to analyze the audience and help deliver what they had, and that was such a foreign concept when I started, and that was something that I like to think was SB Nation's real one of their real impacts, was this ability to kind of directly tap into the community, and that I think a lot of media companies still don't quite know how to do it in the same way. And so I just that was for me, that was the best part of working there, was just feeling like I had one, I could scratch my own itch of like kind of who do I have to talk about this with, and two, like as you kind of go further on, you really felt like you understood wherever that fan group was gathering, whether it was Twitter, whether it was on your in our comment section, which like kind of proto Twitter or whatever, you felt like you really were tapped in. And that I think made a lot of the people that came out of the SB Nation apparatus, people who like you, like Kyle, gain a following after that, is because they knew what their followers were like. They were one of their followers. So that's something that I think is the real legacy of what we did. I'd like to think, at least,
No,
that and like a couple really silly, stupid things.
now that I think you really have laid it out in a way that it's honestly very refreshing that you're pointing out the aspect of audience engagement, but also understanding of the audience. And so, like you said, like it's easy to relate to the audience when you are a part of the audience. Like when you actually understand what it is that the fan base is kind of craving when it comes to content. And as somebody who's been on both sides, as a guy who is working at the Athletic and helping to produce the content that is coming out, and obviously as somebody who's still a fan of basketball, what are some of the things that what are some of the voids do you think that are in the content space of like the average fan is maybe missing out on if they're looking for a specific piece of content?
I mean, I've said it before, but I think the biggest problem is that there's so much of everything that it's hard to know where to look. And it's all fragmented and all over the place. So I don't think there's really like a lot of people ask like, what's an undercovered thing in the sport? And the answer is you can find it everywhere. What's hard to do is figure out how to find it and where to find it and how to find it that's good. It's all so sprawling and spread. I think there is often, and I think we're getting better at this. I mean, as a industry, and there's often you can cover the game like a sport, and you can cover the game like a show, and you're reaching a large audience either way. But I think that one of the misconceptions is that I think most of the people who love basketball as a sport also kind of love it as a show too. And I think there are ways where maybe we assume those are two different people, and I've always kind of rejected that premise a little bit. So I'm just speaking for myself, like I will watch a game and I'm like really excited to sort of see the like kind of low man rotations and the like the stunts and
The real
wow,
X's and O's. Yep.
yeah, they ran this. They ran. Wow, look, there's baseline hammer play. Oh my god, I know what that is. But I'm also like fascinated by the human dynamics of, just to give an example, like what is it like to be Giannis's teammate right now?
I actually thought of that.
All this stuff of going on, or even like I think the other thing that is like even the stuff around the game, like we did. I'm working with Jared Weiss, our Spurs writer, or new Spurs writer, covering Wembanyama, and like kind of on this unique sort of beat where he's covering the Spurs, but really he's kind of trying to find ways into covering Wembanyama in a unique way. And like there was this whole fascination the other day about like how tall is he, which like it's kind of like a really silly thing. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything. If he's 7'5" or 7'7", like it doesn't really change how he plays basketball. But it was sort of kind of interesting to see like how many people were just like fascinated by these pictures of him and looking at him. And does Boban Marjanovic was on saying, does he look up to him like that? And that, I think that like sort of curiosity about this person blends with the curiosity of Wembanyama himself, but also blends with the curiosity of how he actually plays in a way that I think brings everyone, like, if you're a fan of like X's and O's, you're also kind of a little curious about like kind of, well, how tall is he? Has he grown? Like you're sort of interested in this stuff too. And I think there's an assumption that, they're two different audiences, but I think it all connects to telling what the experience of watching Wembanyama is like, whether you're watching him on the court, whether you're looking at pictures of him off the court, whether you're watching somebody else talk about him, whether you're seeing him play chess with a bunch of people in New York City, whether you're reading Jared's amazing feature about what he did this summer. It's all part of the same audience and experience. And I think sometimes we take that for granted.
Yeah, but Mike, I think you're bringing up a lot of very valid points, and like,
thank you.
Yeah, and you're presenting it in a way that I really kind of never thought about it, where you separated, where you said the difference between sport and a show. And really, I think that you're right, that those two things don't always have to be mutually exclusive. Like, there at some point there is going to be a Venn diagram of kind of an overlap where those interests are shared. And so, I think that it's a part of, people who are in basketball media right now is to, kind of find that sweet spot where there is that shaded area in the overlap in the Venn diagram, and to be able to, to kind of tap into that bit of content and really like that's what the fans want. And so we have to, keep the fans engaged. But also, educate them, like you said, on low man, or talking about different horn sets and floppy. Like the fans want both at the same time.
I mean, this is going to sound crass a little bit and slightly dehumanizing to the players, and I don't mean it to be that way. But to most fans, they are just avatars through a screen. It's the same way that Jon Snow and who's a main character on a really big show right now.
Or I was gonna say Walter White, Breaking Bad, or
what's her name? The like Abbott Elementary characters. Why am I blanking on their names? Melissa and what's the name of the Janine?
Janine, yeah.
Yeah. To a lot of the audience, like this is gonna sound. I mean, I really like this is like that is how they interact with these people. They don't actually talk to them. They are just avatars of something in the same way fictional characters are. And so I think if you're covering the league, you've got to think of those as the same thing. I mean, you guys are huge Hoops fans. Aren't you excited about the Netflix starting 5 series and some of the stuff on there?
I'm getting ready to tap into it this weekend, right. And I think the first 5 minutes when of the clip they put on Twitter of the preview, and it's like, okay, Halliburton and Shea, like like him talking about like the nervousness that he's feeling before that Game 7, and not even knowing that he's going to go in there and tear his Achilles. Like there's a lot of drama. You know what happens, but
you still want to watch it. So
exactly.
Like, why would you thumb your nose at the culture side of this? That's kind of the point.
No, for sure. I think that the entertainment aspect is such a big part of what consumers want. When I was at Media Day for Wizards Media Day, like people weren't really concerned about what people's off season workouts were like. People would know, did Keyshawn George grow? Did he grow an inch? Like it's like that. That's what people like really care about. Like
Yeah, although I would argue that they also care about what you're describing. That's sort of the point.
Yeah, no, for sure.
They don't verbalize it, but like they also care about it because what they're really interested in is Keyshawn George as this sort of physical representation of some idea to them.
Oh,
That's a little. I think this is a part where I feel like if I'm a player in this, I do understand this does feel a little dehumanizing to me. Like Kevin Durant has talked about this a lot, and I do understand his point, and I think that is unique to our media landscape now. Is that they do feel like actors, but they are not actors.
No, they are actual human beings.
Yeah, and I can understand, and even as we try to do that, like nobody is ever gonna. Unless you actually know them, that is how the fans will see them. And so I understand the challenge there. And especially I think to reporters who actually have to interact with a human being, I can understand the difficulty of navigating that because it is awkward and it is a little overwhelming to these people. And I think it's a uniquely basketball problem. I don't think you see this as much in other sports because you don't see the player when you see them play.
Oh, for sure. Mike, I got one last question that I want to have for you. As somebody who is, still working in media right now, what advice would you give to a kid who, just loves hoops and they want to grow up to cover basketball? Like, what advice would you give to them as far as not even just like the entry points level, but what like life skills do you think would be important for them to learn now that could be advantageous for them if they were to want to become a sports journalist?
Yeah, I mean, besides don't.
Retweet.
I mean, but I just think it's all about curiosity and paying attention are the two things that just translate no matter what you do. I mean, you'd be shocked to know that if you just train your eyes somewhere else, on your TV screen, you'll see things that other people won't. Like you'll be shocked to know like what you might find, and that's number one. You can't. That's be curious and pay attention. If you're constantly doing that more than your peers, you're gonna notice things that other people are not, and you're gonna find a niche. Whatever. It's not about whether you're a writer, whether you're a video person. I mean, you're gonna hear a lot of media companies say like, kind of, we're pivoted, we're going this medium or that medium or that medium. The skills that translate are curiosity and paying attention. Yeah, there's no substitute for those. That's what I would say.
I think those are very astute observations. And so for anybody out there that's listening, if you're watching the games, just observe, maybe take notes on the games. And then that's really kind of how
phone down.
Yeah, there you go. Put your phone down, actually pay attention and, just kind of develop that skill set. And, eventually, my favorite Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, once you start putting in that 10,000 hours, then it'll just become seamless, just second nature for you because it's something that you're already accustomed to.
Yeah, the one note I'll add on to that, too, is aside from putting your phone down, is read as much as you possibly can. I mean, read. If it weren't for the work that someone Mike, you named some people earlier that I, as a Nuggets fan, was like constantly looking for the next work, like someone like Adam Mares. Those kind of writers, they do have an impact on the younger crowd. I know, Troy, you were saying earlier that you grew up reading Truth About It and Bullets Forever. And, for that, I do just want to say, Mike, I really appreciate all the work that you've done in the past and the work that you're still doing, too, because it does reach people. And, with that in mind, speaking of work you're still doing, you have a book out. Would you mind plugging that a little bit?
No, I don't want to plug my book. Yeah, it's called Spaced Out: How the NBA's Three-Point Revolution Changed Everything You Thought You Knew About Basketball. It's been out for a few years. You can find it on all the different book platforms. The idea, when writing that book was sort of this premise that, 20 years ago, the court was this big. We're on video, right? I can do this.
Okay.
the court was this big, and because everybody's gotten really amazing at shooting threes and all that, the court is now this big, and how that has transformed the game in ways big and small, all the way from what superstars, really broad questions like what superstars do, and who are the important, what types of people that matter, to strategic questions like why is everybody running pick and rolls now, how do we that sort of thing, all the way down to, I would say, kind of tactical, cognitive, psychological, in terms of how do we learn how to do this, how do we perfect a shooting motion, how do we literally move on the court. And so it's sort of I would say it's a kind of a coverage of like kind of the mid 2000s to today, sort of how do we get to this place, how did the people that were innovating change the way everybody else worked. And just the goal is, if you're sort of someone who's been watching basketball for 20 30 years, and you watch the game a certain way, like how do you make sense of what you're watching now versus what you're watching then? And it was actually pretty validating to see this finals, because I felt like that in particular, kind of the Pacers Thunder series was just a very, like, we have gotten to the modern age, like everybody forget shooting threes, everybody's the court space that was actually used, the real estate of the court was so much wider than ever before, and it was this egalitarian game, all the pieces fitting together. It was what I would say is like kind of the perfect spaced out finals that got us there. So yeah, if that series really captivated you, hopefully this book does too.
Yeah, no, like I am very appreciative of you kind of breaking down like the history of the spacing in the NBA, and that I think that we need more basketball content out there like that, where you're really breaking down the X's and O's in a way that it makes it very relatable for the fans to be able to understand some of the ways that the game has changed. And Mike, before we get you out,
we're doing some video stuff that I'm working through, so
okay,
you'll see it from us.
Hey, Mike,
we have access to highlight footage that we were starting to play with in the playoffs. We're trying to make different breakdown videos. There's some exciting stuff we're working through.
Okay, I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that. Shout out to you for getting into the video breakdown stuff. Shout out to Tim Legler. I saw his new breakdown with the coaches during the film segment. I think that we just need more of that in the space of of people really talking about the things that are actually happening on the court.
Yeah, well, hopefully we do it well.
Hey, Mike, and before we get you out of here, man, I look, we're going to put you on the spot here. The Wizards over-under total of 20.5 wins for the season. No pressure, but where would you side on that particular question?
Under.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Under.
No, I'm kind of with you
I would
there.
say I think they're even money have the worst record in the league again.
Yeah, no, like I completely agree there. We talked about last week how Kevin Pelton put out his projections for the season, and that the Wizards had the lowest projection in the history since he's been doing the projections. So it's going to be a rough year, but I think that we're all going to be kind of watching to see how everything develops. X's and O's wise with some of these players. And if they could just get a couple of hits on some of these bites of the apple they're having.
Yeah, let's hope.
All right. Well, Mike Prada of The Athletic, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Capital Hoop Caucus.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate all the work you do.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Like I said, man, I really want to give you your flowers for being one of the pioneers in the basketball blogging space. And like Wardell said, if it wasn't for everything is, about growth and development, and, a show like this couldn't exist without, some of the stuff that you and Kyle were doing, 10, 15 years ago.
Well, I appreciate that. Your check's in the mail.
All right. We're going to go to commercial again. When we get back, you'll hear the scouting report. This is the Capital Hoop Caucus on ESPN 630 and the ESPN 630 app. back into the Capitol Hoop Caucus on ESPN 630. Alongside Isaac Otchicum Harrison, Troy Halliburton, I am Wardell McCabe. Special thanks to our special guest this week, Mike Prada, for joining us on the last two segments. And thank you all to everyone listening for just sticking around with us. We really appreciate you all. Now, we mentioned earlier in the show that the NBA's regular season is almost here, so now seems about as great a time as any to conduct our first Wizards scouting report on the team, which is when we'll go player by player for a few members of the roster, with our hosts letting us know if their stock has risen, fallen, or stayed the same. And this week we're going to be getting things started by looking at the players that the franchise brought in this offseason, whether that be through the draft, trades, or free agency. So, Troy, Isaac, you guys ready for the scouting report?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get things started first with Troy. Let me just get your gauge. Is the stock up, down, or the same for Trey Johnson?
Ooh, I'm going to say right now the stock is slightly down for Trey, just based off of what we saw from him from Summer League to what he did in the preseason games. And to me, I think that the biggest thing that I noticed was that the physicality of the actual NBA game is going to be a little bit of an adjustment for Trey. And to me, I just don't think that he looked as comfortable on the basketball court in the 3 preseason games as he did in the summer. And so, I think that, I am still very confident and high on his ability to be a good professional. I think that the Wizards fans probably need to curb their expectations for what we are expecting from him for this season. I know that there are a lot of people like, why isn't Trey Johnson in Rookie of the Year conversations? And it's like, number one, like he's not going to start on a team that's going to win less than 20 basketball games. And so, I think that the biggest thing for me is his stock is down because of, he had a really hot summer league and a not so hot preseason. But I think that over the course of this entirety of this regular season, I'm just very curious to see as to, how he can develop some strength and be more comfortable on the basketball court.
No, Isaac?
Well, I'm going to say stock is down, but don't look at his stock being down as a negative thing. I keep it as a positive thing because he's still growing as a player. When we were talking off the air, my biggest thing with Trey is I got to give him some grace. Whether he's a lottery pick or not, I don't care. Give a young player grace to play. You could tell that he's uncomfortable because I don't think he's made that transition switch from training camp mode playing when you're playing against your teammates, understanding what it is, since you haven't played in front of the whistle, in front of the refs like that since Summer League. He didn't get the opportunity like Keyshawn George to go play under the FIBA whistle just to see some different players. Trey was he's a young guy trying to make that transition. So I'm going to give Trey Johnson the best grace possible and just let it roll in the development. That his stock is down right now because he's not comfortable, but he will be comfortable. You can tell throughout the preseason that he's growing, especially he started scoring more in this last preseason game.
All right, well, I appreciate that optimism, and for that, I'll give you a point for round 1. So you're up right there, but let's move on to round 2. Isaac, stock up, stock down on Will Riley.
Oh, stock all the way up. We have a gem. We have a gem or a diamond that we're getting ready to polish and is going to be shining debuted. Will Riley showed that he is he's a good second-round pick. And as someone who's been around a lot of second-round picks and helped develop some second-round picks as far as like rebounding for them, you can tell that he's been working. He's been working to try to show that I belong here, despite being possibly one of the youngest guys in the rosters and possibly underweight as far as strength. You can tell that he's going to be growing, and it's just only the beginning. Now, his biggest thing is if he can stay healthy and stay this productive coming off the bench with the limited minutes that he has, use his opportunity wisely, we have a gem here.
Troy?
I'm going to go stock way up for Will Riley. I love the way that he looked in the preseason. And to me, shout out to Will Riley, who was a first-round draft pick. He was just the second pick in the first round. I think that, the Wizards identified him as a player that they were looking at with that second draft pick when they got the extra pick they got from the Memphis Grizzlies. And to me, I think that he is a guy who, if he can develop the ball handling skills, I think that they drafted him as a wing, but I don't think that they want to really kind of box him in as to what type of player he is. And I think that they're going to give him plenty of opportunities, both in the G League and with the big team, to go out there and develop some skills. And if he can develop those ball handling skills and to become like a person who initiates offense, then I think that really could unlock his game and take it to a complete level. And then we're talking about, the different heights of what he can be as a prospect.
All right, well, the devil is in the details, and for getting the correction there, that means that the point has to go over to Troy.
Appreciate you, Troy. No, I guess maybe the way he's to me, the way he's playing like a second round pick trying to make the team. He's struggling. He's
doubling down when wrong is an interesting strategy.
He's looking hungry.
You know what? I'm going to do something we have never done before. I'm docking you a point. You're back to 0. We have to move on to
He's
round
playing
3.
hungry.
You're trying to hijack the show. I will not allow it. We got to move on to round 3. Troy, stock up, stock down on Jameer Watkins.
I'm going to say this. The stock is up on Jameer Watkins. I liked what he did, and what was the first preseason game against the Raptors. He came in and just played like a dog. And so to me, I think that this is a guy who knows what he is, that second round pick who's actually trying to, make this team and put himself in a position to change his family's circumstances. He just plays so darn hard. And I think that he's another guy who I don't think they want to put him in a box and say he's just a dog defender type of guy. They want to see him kind of develop his ball handling skills and develop his shot. And so just off of what I saw from his action in the preseason, this is a guy who's not going to be afraid of the NBA physicality and who can actually get on the court and hold his own.
I'm gonna say stock up because Jameer Watkins provides something that a lot of other teams wish they could have, they can just bring in, is someone's he's impacting the game without scoring a lot of points. His plus minus, in the Raptors game, was plus 11. He didn't score anything. He didn't score, but his impact on the floor proved that he was a greater asset for the Wizards on the floor at that time. So guys like that are hard to find, and they're even harder to develop because, some people have egos and mentalities are hard there. So for him to have that mentality coming in straight in as a rookie, given that, yes, he is an official second-round draft pick, my correction for the previous round, someone like that is hard to find, and I hope they keep on to that and have that kind of rub off on everybody else.
Well, re-acknowledging the mistake you made in the past is not going to help you here, so we're going to have to get the point to Troy. He's up 3-0. Let's move on to round 4. Isaac, stock up, stock down on CJ McCollum.
Stock's up. He's showing that, hey, I'm CJ McCollum. He's scoring well. I'm very curious to see how he's going to transition to being the primary ball handler for the time being, see where that kind of fits in with the Wizards' timeline. But he is showing that, hey, there's a reason why I'm here as that vet, as to completely show how Bub to do this thing as a guard or as a two-way guard trying to play either the 1-2 and the 3. So for him being a great vet in that example and also kind of showing right now in the preseason, his stock may be going up just on the trade value, stock up.
Stock up for sure. He's healthy first. He's a professional bucket getter. He's out there, doing what he does. He's taking over as a leader in the locker room. I've been impressed with what we've gotten from CJ so far, and if he can just keep this up, I think that he will set a great example as the kind of adult in the room for the Wizards.
All right, well, you're setting a great example as the adult in the room here, so you're up 4-0. Let's move on to the final round. Troy, stock up, stock down on Cam Whitmore.
I'm gonna go stock down right now, only because he didn't play in yesterday's preseason game. I think they said he has a mild ankle injury. I don't think that it's something that's too concerning for him to, maybe not be able to start the regular season. But to me, I think that something that I'm just thinking in my head of something that Mike Prada was saying when he was on. It's he didn't get opportunities in Houston. He's coming to D.C. to get opportunities. And it's man, is he going to be able to get all of the opportunities that he really needs here just because of the fact that there's 10 other guys at his position? And so, I think that, this next month might be the most important month of his basketball life. Like, in order for him to kind of set an example as far as like, okay, I can become a reliable rotational player. If he can do that, then then he'll gain the trust of this coaching staff and be able to carry that out throughout the regular season. But if it gets off to a rocky start and he's not really playing as much, then I think that there would be a lot of cause for concern with him kind of not being able to crack opportunities on a team with expectations as low.
Yeah, well, the pressure's certainly on Cam. Now the pressure shifts over to Isaac. Stock up, stock down on Cam Whitmore.
I'm going to say stock kind of stays the same from the expectations. This preseason for Cam has shown a test for him of how he can handle the opportunities that are given to him and how is he handling them as a player and an individual. You got a DNP in the Pistons game. You didn't play really well so far in the couple preseason games. You showed some flashes that you can be more offensively. You are more than offensive, but you play a little bit of defense. So right now for him, this is a test saying, hey, if I'm Will Dawkins or Brian Keefe, I'm going to give you this role. Can you master this role? Can you be excellent at this role? And then we'll give you more opportunities. So for him, I'm going to say stock stays the same because the jury's still out. I want to hope nothing but the best for him, that he grows. But, I want to see how he reacts and how he kind of goes through this season.
Hopefully he rises to the occasion just like you did. So you did get yourself a point to close out this segment. So this score for this week, 4-1. Let us know at home by texting into the show at 833-377-6630 if you think Isaac deserves to have that point returned or not. If not, you could also let me know if we should give that point retroactively to Troy, because we could also do that. Just let us know. All right, we're going to take one final break here. On the other side, we'll have trivia time for the line. This is the Capitol Hoop Caucus on ESPN 630 and the ESPN 630 app. Welcome back into the Capitol Hoop Caucus. I'm Wardell McCabe, and I'm joined, as always, by Troy Halliburton and Isaac Hodgkin-Harris. Very special shout-out to Mike Prada of The Athletic for joining us earlier in today's show. And, well, if you're just tuning in and wasn't aware that Mike Prada joined us, let me catch you up on some other things that you may have missed, because we recapped the Wizards preseason and, well, the expectations that we may have from the Wizards roster after the games that they played, and what players we anticipate making a leap this upcoming season, as well as what players we anticipate might be on the trading block when this season progresses a little bit more. And then from there, we want to just give a quick shout out to Malcolm Brogdon, who has just announced his retirement earlier this week. And then we rejoined the show with Mike Prada, and both he and Troy had a very in-depth conversation about just the general changing landscape of the NBA media. And I think it's very well worth everyone's listen. So if you weren't able to catch it live on air, then please go to your favorite podcasting platform and search up the show and listen back to that segment. Or you can go over to YouTube and watch that segment if you'd like. As Mike did note, we are on video, so we do have a little bit of the visual interaction and engagement there. And then from there, after Mike left the show, we were able to have the first scouting report of the Wizards season based on the expectations we have of the new additions to the roster from this past offseason, whether we thought that their stocks are up or down. But it's just about time to close the show. So I have to ask Isaac this week a real big question. What time is it?
Trivia time?
That's absolutely right. It is trivia time, which means it's time for me to leave and make way for our next host. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Trivia Time from the Line. I'm your host, Guy, and you all know the name of the game, but let's get to the aim of the game, which is this: to score more points than your opponent. We'll have 5 minutes on the clock, during which our contestants will have to correctly guess as many players' names as possible in a surprise category of our choosing. And our contestants this week, Isaac and Troy. Troy, have you got anything inspiring for the kids at home today?
Eat your Wheaties.
Eat them good. Now, Isaac, same question. Your microphone's off. All right, let's get on to this week's trivia category, which means it's time for you both to flip over those papers because you'll be guessing the career highs scoring points for every player on the Wizards roster throughout their career. When you make your guess, please provide their scoring total and the date it occurred, along with the names you think they are. Now, let's guess the Wizards roster by their single game career highs and points. We'll start first with Troy.
Let's go January 28th, 2020, 51 points. Let's go with Bradley Beal.
No, on the current Wizards roster.
On the current Wizards roster.
Isaac.
January 28, 2020, CJ McCollum?
No, Troy.
Wait, single game scoring career highs. So, wait, it doesn't have to be on the Wizards still?
Every player on this roster is currently on the Wizards active roster.
Wait,
But they when they scored, they
No.
weren't on the
No,
Wizards.
They weren't on the
Career
Wizards.
highs. Career highs in general.
All right. Oh, okay. All right, let's go 51 points. January 28th, 2020. Let's go with Chris Middleton.
It is Chris Middleton. Isaac.
32 points, April 3rd, 2025? CJ McCollum?
No, Troy.
Okay, let's go 32 points. April 3rd, 2025. Let's go with Bilal Coulibaly.
No, Isaac.
I'm going to go with your 31 points, December 28th, 2024, Bub Carrington.
No, Troy.
Let's go 34 points. April 11th, 2025. Let's go Bilal Coulibaly.
No, Isaac.
This is hard. Oh, my gosh. 50 points, January 31st, 2018. CJ McCollum.
It is CJ McCollum. Troy.
Wait, see, that's not his career high. He dropped 50 on the Wizards last year.
So he
that's
tied
the
it.
first,
So
that he tied it.
okay.
That's the
He
first
tied
time
it.
he said it.
Okay.
He tied it then.
All right, let's see. Man. 13 points, April 13th, 2025. Is that Tristan Vucevic?
No, it is not. Isaac.
I want to say 13 points, April 13th, 2025 is Justin Champagny.
No, it is not. Troy.
Oh, let's go 32 points, April 3rd, 2025, Justin Champagny.
No, Isaac.
32 points, February 10th, 2019, Corey Kispert.
No, Troy.
34 points, March 15th, 2025, Justin Champagny.
No,
Oh, my God.
Isaac.
34 points, March 15th, 2025, Bub Carrington.
No, Troy.
Oh my God, this is 31 points, December 28th, 2024. Is that Bilal Coulibaly?
No, Isaac.
Yo, this.
Oh, gosh. All right. 3 points, January 7th, 2025, Tristan Vucevic.
No.
Oh, my
Troy.
God.
Okay, let's go 28 points, April 13th, 2025, Bub Carrington.
No, Isaac.
What? Yeah,
5 points, November 23rd, 2024, Keyshawn George.
No, Troy.
All right, 31 points, December 28th, 2024, Bilal Coulibaly.
No, Isaac.
27 points, February 10th, 2023. On the current Wizards roster. Man, they're so young. Let's say Sharif Cooper.
No,
Playing the G
Troy.
League. Does G League count though? Is
No.
G League? No, none G
Only
League.
regular
All
season.
the regular
Okay,
season?
32
Okay.
points, February 10th, 2019. Let's go with Marvin Bagley.
It is Marvin Bagley.
God.
Isaac.
Oh my God. Oh man.
I was
20
running out.
29 points, April 2nd, 2023, I'm just kidding. Marvin Bagley.
No! Each player's only named once. What? Troy.
Let's go 34 points, April 11th, 2025. Let's go Corey Kispert.
No! Isaac.
20. Oh, wait a second. February 10th, 29. Yeah, never mind. 13 points, April 13th, 2025. Keyshawn George.
No! Troy for the last guess?
Let's go 32 points, April 3rd, 2025. Let's go Alex R.
No!
Wardell. Wait. This category. My God.
Let's go through the remaining unanswered names. 34 points, March 15th, 2025. Alex Sarr. 34 points, April 11th, 2025. Cam Whitmore. 32 points, April 3rd, 2025. Bub Carrington. 31 points, December 28th, 2024. Justin Champagny. 29 points, April 2nd, 2023. Corey Kispert. 28 points, April 13th, 2025. Tristan Vukcevic.
Whoa.
27 points, February 10th, 2023. Malachi Branham. 27 points, October 30th, 2024. Bilal Koulibaly. 24 points, January 16th, 2025. Keyshawn George. 20 points, March 29th, 2025. AJ Johnson. 18 points, January 11th, 2023. Anthony Gill. 13 points, April 13th, 2025. Dylan Jones. 5 points, November 23rd, 2024. Alondis Williams. And 3 points, January 7th, 2025. Someone who Isaac thought had 27 points, Sharif Cooper. Now let's tally up these results and see who this week's winner was. And somehow, in a week during which only 3 points were scored, your winner still undisputed, Troy.
I got to win, but I don't feel good about it.
You shouldn't. You should not feel good about
I
it.
definitely do not.
We should all feel great about it. And that does it all for us here at Trivia Time for the Line. We'll see you all next week. Bye. All right. How did this week go?
So, to my defense, I really thought it was G League and, both. Because, the Wizards roster, how many guys are really getting NBA minutes? So, I was just thinking G League with Sharif Cooper. I'm like, he's at 30. And then, Alondis Williams had 50 in the G League.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we'll see. But,
I hear you.
that was
But
a wash.
you also you guessed Marvin Bagley III right after Marvin Bagley was guessed.
I don't know. I just, bro, the Wizards roster is so blurred. When it comes to high, you forget some of these guys were actually hooping at other places in the league. So,
All right. Well, anyways, that just about does it for the show. But we all know that before we exit, we always have to take our last shots, which is when each of our hosts has 24 seconds to discuss anything basketball related beyond the limits of the DMV. Could be a shout out, could be a hot take, whatever it is. Now is the time to let it fly. So, Isaac, I'll ask you, are you ready to take your last shot?
I am. Shout out to my baby brother signing his Exhibit 10 contract with the New Orleans Pelicans. Josh Oduru, DMV native from Gainesville, Virginia, or Haymarket, whoever you call it for. Proud of you. This is a shout out from your family in the DMV, and I'm looking forward to see you come up when you guys come up here and play. And earn your minutes. Play hard at training camp for me.
All right, Troy.
I'm gonna take my last shot this week as a call of action to Monumental Sports. We got to get something figured out about the TV watching situation right now. There are so many fans who are literally being blacked out from being able to watch the games, and I think that it's unfair for them to expect them to pay $20 a month for a service that is shoddy at best.
Well, I don't mean to advocate for any illegal, but shiver me timbers, Listen, arr, you know what I'm saying? He doesn't seem to. I don't. Anyways,
I get it. I get it. But
let's go ahead and take this last one. All right, my shout out this week. I don't know how this wasn't done already, but it has to go to Celtics Media. Shout out to them for trying to do what they could. And shout out to everyone at CLNS Media for dropping the footage of
Bobby
the
scored.
Celtics Media
I was about to say,
trying to play against the coaches and thinking that you could line up against psycho-ass Joe Mazzulla and that he wasn't going to full court press. Oh, what an amazing function that was. All right, that does it for us here on the Capitol Hoop Caucus. Troy, for our listeners at home, where can they get more of your work?
You can always find me on the platform formerly known as Twitter, now X, at Troy Halliburton.
And you can always find me at Ike Irie Ites on X. And stay tuned for a preview for the A10. College basketball season's upon us. And as well as Instagram at Isaac_Ajukum-Harris224.
And where can they follow the show?
You can always follow the show on X at Cap Hoop Caucus, and then on Instagram at Capital Hoop Caucus.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me on another wonderful episode of the Capitol Hoop Caucus, and thank you all so much at home for doing the same. As I said earlier, if you missed any part of the show, don't worry. You can always catch it on the podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcasts, or also on YouTube. And when you get there, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Or if you're on the podcast, give us a 5-star rating and review, because it really helps us to reach other basketball fans. And if you're listening right now on ESPN 630, stick around, because there's a lot coming up for us on the airways today. After the commercial, you'll hear the next episode of College Football Tailgate with Amber Wilson and Jonathan Zaslow as they broadcast live from Notre Dame's campus to preview the Fighting Irish's home game and a showdown against the 20th ranked USC Trojans. Right after that, we'll immediately go into ESPN Radio College Football's coverage of Oklahoma at South Carolina with Mark Kessisher, Kelly Stufer, and Ian Fitzsimmons calling the action. Then from there, we'll head into the Virginia Sports Radio Network as the Cavaliers will be hosting Washington State for a 6:30 p.m. kickoff with John Freeman, Ahmad Hawkins, and Jay James on the call. There's no better place to tune in to each of those games than ESPN630DC.com, the ESPN 630 app, or 630 on your local AM dial. Signing off for Isaac Ajukum-Harris, Troy Halliburton, myself, Wardell McCabe, and our very special guest this week, Mike Prada of The Athletic. This has been another episode of the Capitol Hoop Caucus, reminding you that 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime, and the best odds of treating it is by catching it early. So please, if you can, speak to your primary care providers to get your checkups scheduled. Be kind to one another. We'll talk to you all at the same time next week.